And with that, we are here for the hearing of Attorney Lee. I'm just going to introduce the council, and then Attorney Lee, give you a chance to introduce anyone you have with you here today, and we'll get right into things. So starting to my right, we have Counselor Tara Jacobs, Counselor Tamisha Civil, Counselor Maridolan, Counselor Christopher Ianella, Counselor Ian Ziegler, and Counselor Terrence Kennedy, and Attorney Lee. You've brought two witnesses to speak on your behalf this morning?
I did.
Okay, and we'll be hearing from one or the other first?
We'll hear from Peter Caparso first.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Morning, members of the Governor's Council. My name is Peter Caparso, and I'm here to discuss the proposed Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court candidate, Mark Lee. I've known Mark for over 40 years, and our relationship started ironically on the campaign trail. We both attended St. John's High School in Shrewsbury, and I decided to challenge the incumbent leader for the senior class president. I'm not going to lie, it was a close election, and it came down to the wire. However, in the end, I ended Mark's re-election bid. When I came into high school the next day, I found a handwritten note congratulating me on my victory and promising a seamless transition. The note was elegant, yet honorable, congenial, and full of grace, a testament to Mark's character. It became apparent to me that Mark was an honorable man, full of respect and decorum. Our relationship continued through high school and college. When we both graduated, decided to move in together in an apartment in Worcester. Over the next couple of years, I was able to observe firsthand as Mark launched his law practice upon finishing law school. Focusing on real estate, Mark built a solid and successful practice, serving many clients and providing excellent service. Mark proved to be always a solid and reasonable individual to discuss things with. He's the type of individual who digests the information provided to him and then carefully considers all the elements before rendering an opinion or a decision. Oftentimes, I would ask Mark to join in the weekend festivities, to only be respectfully denied, as he felt he had to ensure he completed his analysis for his caseloads. Over the next couple of years, Mark's practice became sought after for reliable and trustworthy results. However, in my conversations with Mark, he was feeling an urge to represent those less fortunate or needing someone in their corner. He started to pivot his practice into family and probate type cases, and oftentimes would tell me of the satisfaction he felt in representing those clients. A committed family man, a parent to 3 children, Mark started to get involved in his community by first being a planning board member and then becoming a selectman for the town of Oxford. He often told me we have a duty to make things better. We have to try, because if we give up, we have nothing. He has a strong sense of common respect and the desire for betterment for where he lives. I admire him for that, as I see less and less, unfortunately, in today's times. Not many people get to watch a person evolve, mature, blossom, and excel throughout their life. I've had this privilege, and I would strongly advocate for the proposal for Mr. Lee to be approved. I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the council?
Quick.
Yeah, sorry.
Well said.
No, we're good. No, we're good, but thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being here this morning.
Next, I have John Goggins from the Central Housing Court in Worcester.
I have a question for him before we start. My speech 2 weeks ago.
Fantastic, fantastic. Couldn't have been better.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's John Goggins. I am the first assistant in the Central Division of the Housing Court. I've known Mark since 1975, so going on 50 years. We were friends as young kids, kind of deviated a little bit. He went to St. John's, I went to Auburn High, kind of lost track of each other, and then we reconnected on December 27th, 1995, the day we both got sworn in over at Faneuil Hall. And for the past 30 years, I have gotten to get reacquainted with Mark and know him as an excellent colleague and a wonderful friend. I have watched him mature from trying to figure out how to handle a divorce case to being in the housing court almost every single day. This is a man who is, his demeanor is absolutely incredible. I have watched him in hearings where the world is blowing up around him. Other lawyers are yelling at him. There is self-represented litigants all having issues with him, and through it all, Mark remains stoic. He doesn't take the bait. His ability to stay focused and be very effective for not only his clients, but also treating the other side with fairness and compassion and integrity. I've consulted with him many times on his divorce cases and the difficulties that happens. He is a strong advocate of not having children be used as weapons in a divorce. He's handled some very difficult divorces, and he is able to rise above that. His empathy is outstanding. He has the ability, the life experience to empathize and put himself in somebody else's shoes and understand where they're coming from. I truly believe that that will be an asset for him as a member of the probate court, because he will be able to better understand people when he makes his decisions. I don't think you could find a more competent, energetic, experienced, or empathetic candidate for the judicial post of probate judge than Mark, and I would strongly urge everybody to vote for him. I think it would be a very good move for you and make you proud. 10 years from now, you'll be able to say, I voted for him. I'm really glad I did that. He's a good man.
Thank you. Any comments from the council?
Thank you.
Housing court. You're doing a great job.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Same, we appreciate the work you do in the housing court. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, before we move on, is there anyone here to offer testimony in opposition to the nominee? There being none. Attorney Lee, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the council with a statement you have prepared, please go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor DiPaolo. Good morning. I wish to thank Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for my nomination to the probate court. I want to thank the Governor's Council for the time councilors have spent reviewing my applications and speaking with me. I also want to thank Attorneys Boudou and Kesselheim for preparing me for this hearing. I'm honored and grateful to appear before the council as a nominee for the position of Associate Justice in the probate court. I'd like to recognize and thank Chief Justice Brian J. Dunn for his appearance here in support of the court he oversees, as well as my friends Peter Capasso and John Goggins for sharing their experiences this morning. I brought a few people with me to support me this morning. I'd like you to say hello to my sister Suzanne, my lovely wife Nicole, who runs my practice with me. We've been running that practice for 20 years together. We've been married for 12 years. 13 years, she's telling me. I'm flies. Nicole, thank you for your belief and confidence in me. Finally, I want to recognize the efforts of my parents have made over their lifetime in forming the person before you, particularly today as they watch from home on YouTube. I grew up in Holden. My father had a successful 50-year career in real estate in Worcester, and my mother was a full-time mom, caretaker, registered nurse, and office assistant. My parents believed in the value of education and made a commitment to the college education of my sister and me. That commitment included neither one of us graduating with any debt. My father conducted his life by a few pithy maxims. Your word is your bond, and anything worthwhile is hard work. This remains my simple guidance for a professional life. My mother passed on her gift of faith and prayer, the impact of which upon me has been in a life spent trying to be of service to others. I grew up in a family that experienced addiction and recovery. My first marriage ended in divorce, and I became a litigant in the court I practiced in. I eventually ended up sharing custody of my sons with my first wife, and they are now 27 and 24 respectfully, and I am very proud of the men they have become. Later, I started a second family with my wife, Nicole, and we are currently very active with our daughter, who is in the first grade. All of these experiences, coupled with my years of practice, inform my approach to second chances, families, raising children, the dynamics of second families, and working with others with mental health and addiction issues. My own life experience demonstrates that recovery is no litigant or parent should be definitely prejudiced or marginalized because of illness, whether that illness be inspired by addiction or mental health diagnosis. All litigants in the family court can receive treatment and recover. What matters most in the well-being of children is parents who recover. I am fully committed to supporting recovery and mental health supports in probate. 20 years ago, as I went through my own divorce, I learned how hard it is to be in court personally. I learned how the anxiety I experienced as a litigant made it impossible to hear what was going on around me. 20 years ago, in the midst of this, I was humiliated to learn that I was not a great listener, and I didn't pay much attention to who was listening or hearing me. I spent the last 20 years working hard on the critical courtroom skills of being present, observing, listening to my clients, listening to opposing parties, listening to judges, and more importantly, being mindful of who is actually hearing and understanding what is being said. My own experience in court are indelibly sealed upon me in this respect. I recognize the impact of stress and anxiety on litigants and how acknowledging it in the courtroom can reduce anxiety to a manageable level so a hearing can proceed meaningfully. I've been asked many times through this process why I want to serve in the capacity as a judge in the appellate court. I will close with 2 reasons. The first is less important than the second, but I want to do the work of the court. I like to work. For the better part of 2 decades, I have managed a practice, a daily caseload, and met payroll for myself and my employees every week. If approved by this council, I look to transform those skills administratively within the court and to keep up with the daunting caseload our probate courts face every day. The second reason I want to serve the court is this. Over the years, long after hotly contested issues were settled or outgrown or abandoned, parents and sometimes their adult children have come back to let me know that my efforts have made a positive impact in the trajectory of their families. When you consider the court's work on the decisions it makes in the hotly contested moment, and the ripples those decisions can have over the years, in the arc of the history of a family, there is no more worthwhile arena to endeavor to work in and to try to get it. Listen with empathy, to inquire, to listen some more, and to decide in a sober and judicious manner. With that, I will conclude, and again, I thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you very much, Attorney Lee. As is our custom, we'll begin with any questions from the council, starting with the counselor to my right, district-wise, which is Counselor Jacobs. Your left.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
You're right for the chair.
From where we normally sit, clarify for the public. Over there. Counselor Jacobs, please.
Thank you. The irony of all that is I always have to check left and right for it. So it's good to see you. And I do want to say I appreciate you coming out. I will definitely remember your visit for a long time. I think you are the first. I often meet people at Mass Mocha. You're the first who actually had already gotten yourself a ticket and went on into the museum a little bit, and the first that wanted to go see the rest of the museum after we were done talking. So it was memorable, it was enjoyable, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Yeah, it was fantastic. We did talk at length and we talked about so many things. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about that we did talk about and one thing that we didn't talk about. So the first one, we had a conversation about ACEs scores. And first, I'm curious if you've done any further reading into that, because it was a new idea to you at the time, but I think it's a really important one for judges to understand. I think anyone who's working in the best interests of children and families, it's a good thing to understand. For those who are not familiar, ACE, I should have looked it up beforehand to be able to say exactly what those letters stand for, but it's about childhood experiences. And it's a 10-point rating scale of measuring each question. There's 10 questions. Each has if there's a yes, a point. And the higher the point, that's a reflection of the amount of trauma in childhood that translates to adult health outcomes, like more likely to have diabetes or health or heart related issues or autoimmune issues, things like that. And I am curious if you've given it more thought, and I'm curious, I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about from your perspective, what role the court can play in minimizing the harm for children in divorce proceedings that can be contentious or in homes where there's dysfunction, how the court can become more aware of what's happening in those homes and those families, and what the court can bring to those families for their benefit.
So I think the first thing, I personally think the best divorce there is a quick one. And most of the cases that we look at, the issues are fairly discrete. There may be a retirement plan to divide, there may be a house to sell. And then there's going to be what's the family's income and how are two families going to be supported with the same income. I don't think that should take a long time. So, and children always unconsciously know, even if their parents aren't talking to them about the litigation, which we always frown on. They know something's unsettled, something isn't settled. And it's the same for litigants. Litigants always ask me, when is this going to be over? When are we going to be done? Okay, so moving divorce and custody situations along promptly, insisting on discovery deadlines, trying cases. My Chief Justice, if approved, is here today. I don't know what he's going to tell me about pretrial conferences and final hearings at pretrials. But if issues are discrete, I want to move. My goal in serving this court is to move cases and to wrap things up as quickly as possible.
So I appreciate that. That doesn't really go to where it's not discrete issues around fairly simple retirement assets, custody, time, visitation, things like that. It's more towards families that are where there's domestic violence, where the violence maybe is affecting the children, where there's addiction in the family, where there's we're talking about truly dysfunctional, high conflict situations where it may not even present to the court in a very clear way what's going on. Particularly when there is the kind of toxic dysfunction where victim and offender aren't always clear and who's, what's flying around. The accusations may really need to be unfurled to understand the dynamics. But where children have lived a life that's been impacted prior to ever getting to the point where probate and family has the case before them.
So you raise an excellent point. There are a lot of if it's not clear to the judge, it can get clear through a probation department investigation. It can go further with a guardian ad litem investigation, whether that's a fact finder GAL or a clinical GAL. There's a lot of arrows in a judge's quiver as far as what the judge can deploy to get clear on what is actually going on. And that would include our counsel, where an attorney is represented not to do a substituted judgment analysis, but to just represent the interests of the child.
How does that happen? Does the judge determine and appoint a lawyer? child?
I think it occurs in a situation that you described where it's not clear. Where you feel there's domestic violence going on, where who's the bad actor, who's the victim. When you want to get clear on those things, you can't do everything in the courtroom. There has to be a referral out.
So I appreciate you bringing up the GAL role, because that was actually my next question. It was around GALs. I do hear frequently from advocacy groups who are, primarily people who've had experiences in the probate and family court that were not great. And often these are more high conflict domestic violence type divorce proceedings. And the role of the GAL comes up a lot in some of the dissatisfaction and some of the stories that have been shared with me at their root seem to have a shared issue around there are some GALs who really are well informed and well trained about trauma, about domestic violence issues, being able to assess from a standpoint of being very much a specialist in that area. And then there's others who really don't seem to have really a whole lot of that kind of training. And I'm curious your thoughts about the GAL list and if you're able to assess who has the kind of specialized training around understanding family dynamics when they are dysfunctional, toxic, and violent, and just your general thoughts about how the court could better. My understanding is that's a tough list it's tough to get people to it's not well paid, and for a lot of factors, as with many mental health adjacent roles, it's hard to recruit people into it, and there's a struggle there, and I appreciate that. But I'm curious about your thoughts about the role of the GAL and that specialized training, and whether you would be looking at that when you're appraising what their report says.
Well, thank you for your question. I'm very invested in guardian ad litem. Being a guardian ad litem was my inroad into the probate and family court. I didn't start, my involvement with the court did not begin as a litigator. It became that eventually, but I started as an investigator before we had categories in the Commonwealth. And I think your question really goes to, especially in the area of domestic violence, we want a clinician in a case like that with the training. So I think it starts with the appointment. And obviously it's in the judge's discretion if the judge gets back a report that really doesn't deal with that issue to reassign the case to another investigator.
I appreciate that. I do. All right. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have this morning.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ferreira.
Thank you. So I appreciate the fact that you went through a divorce, as I did, and it was over 20 years ago. It was the absolute worst day of my life when I had a judge yelling at me that joint physical custody doesn't work. I've been with GAL at 50 Stanford Street for many months. And I did get custody of my children, and they are like incredibly grateful that it turned out that way. And they're great kids now. They're 26, 30, 33. So I appreciate that you've been through the process, you understand the process, and you're going to make a difference in the courtroom because you understand it, having lived it. And yes, you know, your answers to the questions about the GAL are important. Do you think, like, how often is that used, and when do you send people to a GAL?
I think just as the counselor indicated, when things aren't clear to the judge, when parties can't agree on what day it was, so to speak, I need independent eyes and ears to tell me the who, what, where, when, and why of the film. And if there's domestic violence involved, I really want a specialist who investigates those issues and wants recommendations as to what's best for the family going.
You ever see cases that are fit for direct payments to the children after they go to college?
I have not come across that yet.
You consider that?
I would.
Has any of your clients ever asked for that? I know, I saw your numbers were amazing, that you have like, on mass court, you have 700 pages of cases. I've never seen that before.
In the last year, I did have a mom and a dad who stipulated to that, to direct payments. The parent who had been receiving child support was completely comfortable with the dad making payments directly to the school.
What's happening with I always thought it was unfair, and I still today think it's unfair, that a divorced parent is ordered by the government to pay for college. When if you stay married, you don't have to pay for college. I still think it's wrong. I mean, pay for college doesn't want to pay for college. What's happening today now that there's free college?
Counselor, I'm looking at my wife because we discuss that same issue in the office all the time. I take, your point is well taken.
So how is it playing out now that there's free college in the Commonwealth? Is that not an issue anymore, that people are not getting ordered to pay for college, or are they still getting ordered to pay for college?
The court has to look at the needs of the child, but also in this case, the ability of the parents to pay. And if we're talking about private colleges, that bar is pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, you could order somebody to pay $400,000, right?
You can, but you have to make an order that somebody can comply with too.
Sure. A guy like you. You're divorced, right?
Right.
I mean, until you're a judge, who's probably pretty high still today. But yeah, I don't know. Has anyone ever like brought that up to the highest court saying it's, unequal protection? It's because your status is divorced, you have to pay for college.
I'm not aware of it.
All right. You're gonna be a great judge. You have my vote next week. Also, the counsel to my left,
This side.
is a huge fan of yours, and that weighs in a lot of my decision, but you're gonna be a great judge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Civil.
Thank you. Congratulations, Judge, to your nomination. It was a pleasure speaking with you over the phone. And what's more enlightening is that I really appreciate your own personal testimony as to what helped you be a strong attorney, but also being able to recognize when individuals go through certain things in their life, you know what it means to have a second chance. And that second chance is demonstrating today. And I want to thank you for that. And also, we talked about in length about probation, coming from, working in the probation department. We're looking to strengthening your relationship once you're appointed to work with probation to see how you can not only be a judge that understands what probationers are going through, but also facilitating a conversation with your court to make sure that cases are moving along efficiently, but also making sure that people who come in understand that you are here to help and assist them. So my question for you is, what inspired you to pursue the position as a judge, particularly in the family and probate court?
I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but if I am, you could stop me. I started going to the probate court as a teenager, as a messenger, law firms, running papers around back and forth. I was a paralegal in a law firm where I went to law school. And I really feel like I know the jobs from the ground up. I think being a guardian ad litem first, before I was an advocate, it taught me a lot about the law. But it was wonderful insight into what the actual job of the court is, to get to the facts, and to make rulings based on the facts. So at this point, I've kind of gone through it of everything else I can do, and I'm doing very well as a private practitioner, but I want to bring those skills to the court, the administration of justice side.
Thank you. So my other question for you is, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the families and facing family probate court system today?
I think it's some of the things we've already touched on this morning as far as moving cases. And I believe the experience I'm bringing to this is gonna help you cases. Get people in and out of court. Nobody wants to be in court. Nobody wants to be in the probate and family court. Other than adoptions, there's not a lot of happy work that we do there.
Thank you. I know Paul is a great supporter of yours, and I just want to tell you that you are an ideal person to be a family probate judge because you went through a divorce. You went through your own personal addiction or seeing represented clients from all walks of life. And that is an example of what we look for. People who understand, but also went through it so that when people come in front of them, they know exactly how to help them because you went through that yourself. So I want to say thank you and congratulations again on your nomination.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dillon.
Thank you, Councilor DePaul. Attorney Lee, your own governor's council is supportive of your nomination, and that means a lot to me. And I very much appreciated your coming out to meet with me, enjoyed our conversation, and very much appreciate your following up with an email on the subject of coercive control, which we had talked about. And I'm confident in your understanding of that important, very important issue. And I very much appreciate your acknowledging your wife, Nicole, today for running your law practice. I have no doubt that she did a spectacular job and that you were incredibly fortunate to have her. Am I right? Yes.
If I may.
Obvious.
If I may.
Okay.
My life got a lot better when I just started doing what she told me.
Touche. I just have a couple questions for you. One of the things that I am concerned about, and we talked about this, with pro se parties, is that because they're not attorneys, they don't have attorneys to explain what's happening, the law may be perfectly applied, but because they don't understand that, they may be frustrated, more frustrated coming out of court than they have to be. So I think it's particularly important that you that a judge makes sure that pro se parties understand that the law was applied in their case. Could you just speak to that?
I can. Thank you for the question. With my own experiences with anxiety, sometimes I will repeat back what I think you just said to me to make sure that I'm getting it right. I recognize when I'm not hearing things completely because of whatever I'm trying to process in the moment. I think that's very important to occur in the courtroom. I've watched good judges engage in colloquies with self-represented litigants where the judge will say, "I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I think I heard you say X. Is that what you meant?" And confirming that I understand what you said to the litigant. And I also, you can only do the best we can do. I also think explaining if there's a ruling that's occurring that day, giving a very concise explanation of why you're ruling that way to the party if necessary. Shows respect.
Thank you. I just have one more question for you, which is on the subject of 50-50 visitation and custody, which I think is an ideal that we need to work for. But there are times when it's not appropriate. Can you talk a little bit about what factors you would look at to determine when 50-50 shared custody and visitation was not appropriate? Well, in the best interest of the children.
I think it's been touched on here. Thank you for the question. I think we've touched a little bit on it this morning as far as in terms of situations with domestic violence. In crafting orders that protect the children and that don't re-traumatize the victim. I mean, I shared custody of 2 boys at one time in my life. So I'm a believer in joint physical custody. I mean, all families start together. Custody is shared under one roof. I think you have to have very specific reasons for not in favor of joint physical custody. And they're not necessarily related to geography. I mean, although geography can play a role if the parties live too far apart. Those are my thoughts. Well, I think the situation with domestic violence. Living too far apart for it to be practical. I mean, I once had a case where a toddler was commuting between New Jersey and Massachusetts on a shared physical. That was a New Jersey court order, but we were dealing with it in Mass. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ianella.
Thank you very much. As maybe you've looked at prior tapes, whatever, I'm a really strong advocate for the children. I've heard this phrase, this term, shared physical joint custody. I don't do any probate, so. But what does that mean to you? Am I right? Shared custody could mean one spouse has the children 94% of the time, and the other spouse 6%. That's shared, you agree?
Yes,
What does shared mean to you?
shared parenting time,
So
equal parenting.
equal, so when you use the word shared, could you use that can be substituted by the word equal parenting time? Is that your goal when you? If you already confirmed?
I think that's where it starts.
Yeah, that's good. So let me ask this, I heard you said about geography. Let's assume one family lives in location A, the other one location B. You got two children, I don't know, 8 and 10, and they're 12 miles apart. That an issue with respect to geography, if you're the judge?
No.
And what about school? Going to school, I mean, obviously it's gonna be difficult for one of the parents to get transportation to the children. And one, I would assume, in my hypothetical, one spouse, the kids are near the school, and the other spouse, the kids are far, 12 miles apart. What's your concern with respect to that?
Well,
If any?
I think going back to Counselor Farrar's comments, shared physical custody, shared parenting time requires commitment by both parents to sacrifice. So I expect the parent that has to do the pickups and the drop-offs to make those sacrifices.
No, I appreciate that, I appreciate that. Under what circumstances, if any, would you appoint a guardian ad litem and an attorney for the children?
So a guardian ad litem, I'm looking for them to gather information where something isn't clear.
Help me out, because I don't do this. When you say information, you talk about finances, or you talking about information about the children?
No, I mean, we can have discovery masters for financial information. Any references I'm making to guardian ad litems in this respect is regarding the care and custody of the children. To determine who's been doing what in this family. They were under one roof at one time. What was the status quo then? What has it been since they separated? Okay, and in situations like we've touched upon this morning, if the child is 10, 12 and up, and I believe they need an advocate, I'm going to appoint an art counsel. I want to hear their voice.
What do you call that? I'm sorry, what council?
An art counsel,
ARC, what's it?
ARC.
Okay,
Mhm.
so would you appoint both, a guy, GAL?
Absolutely. More information always assists the court.
Yeah, I get that. What qualities or qualifications should a GAL have?
I started doing guardian ad litem work before there were categories. We now have categories for those and annual trainings. So to even get an appointment now, you have to have the training that's provided in each category.
What does that entail? Like, what was your category?
I was a category F, guardian ad litem, and we would have 2 to 3 days of continuing education each year to remain on the list and to continue to get appointments. And the trainings were awesome, particularly in the area of recognizing domestic violence and coercive control.
I mean, to me, again, I don't do this work, to me, the best GAL would be like a psychiatrist, psychologist at a major hospital. That is, they deal with children. You agree or disagree with that? I know there's not, I mean, how many can you have of those people? But
Well, if we're talking about a child with an IEP or a mental health diagnosis or parents with a mental health diagnosis, I want to bring a clinician in. Sometimes I just need an independent fact finder to go out in the community and be the eyes and ears of the judge.
yeah, what if there's no issues like you refer? Would you ever use clinician?
I wouldn't tell you that I wouldn't. But if I'm looking for a specialized knowledge, then I want a licensed social worker, licensed mental health counselor.
So maybe this judge. He's no longer obviously in the court system. Edward Ginsburg, are you familiar with him?
I'm very familiar with Judge Ginsburg.
Okay, you're very familiar with him. He frequently, and I've had conversations with him frequently, would use GALs and attorney for the children. I know maybe the terminology is different. But it was not necessarily like you're talking about, where there's mental health issues, where's there this issue, that issue. Two decent people. Guess what? If I can get a clinician, head of Beth Israel, chief psychiatric, a psychologist, I want him because he's the best or she's the best. You don't seem to be going that way. You make, at least my impression, you are more into if there was an issue with the parents or some issue with the children. Because I would think, I'm not sure, I would think that person that I'm referring to is gonna have a lot more experience, with all due respect, I'm sure you were a great GAL, than say you. You agree?
I agree with that.
Okay, no, but, yeah, I got it, so I like the fact that more than anything, you're a 50-50 type of guy, at least that's what you start from. Do you give an advantage to one parent? Let's assume in my hypothetical, there's two great parents. Just didn't work out. But one parent isn't working. It's not an issue. The other one is working. You give an advantage when it comes to a parenting plan to the non-working parent, because obviously the non-working parent, he or she is there all the time, you know, they get a little added advantage when it comes to a parenting plan. In other words, maybe 60-40, 65-35, or you're sticking with, if you can, the 50-50.
Well, your fact pattern assumes they're both great parents.
Yeah.
So.
But they both want full custody.
Well,
They're gonna say they're not great parents, but yeah, assume they're almost great parents.
they're great enough.
Yeah.
I don't think the analysis changes. I think you start at a place of why can't they share custody?
All right. No, I like that. No, that's good. Counselor Ferrara's question about college. He's saying that, and again, I thought he said, I couldn't hear it too well, that the court, in certain circumstances, will ask one of the parties to pay for college. And I got the sense he's saying, what are they doing that for? Maybe the kids can pay a portion of the college tuition. What's your position on that? Would you ever order one parent to pay college tuition for a child?
Were there two that could pay?
Well, no, let's assume it's, they're not making exactly the same amount of money. But would you say, okay, you're gonna pay, you know, 35,000, you're gonna pay 20,000, in other words, would you say that, I don't know what the law is in this, if the parents have to pay, would you ever say, that, let's assume these days, private schools, 85, 90,000. Would you say, okay, you're paying 30, you're paying 30, and you know what? Let's let the kid take out a loan.
The cases that I've worked on, have modeled on what is the current in-state tuition, full-time tuition for UMass.
Okay.
And, whether or not,
Sorry, tuition, room and board, or just tuition?
with the whole thing,
Okay.
okay? And what are each respective parent's ability to contribute to that? Okay, I would also look for a contribution from the child.
Okay.
I think it's important to have, an investment in that as
Good.
well.
I like that answer. Also, you know really well. Me, right? The removal statute. I'm one of those people. If the children are moved out of the Commonwealth, you know, that's it. This is my feeling. They're not gonna have a relationship with the parent who lives in the Commonwealth. What if you have a situation where one spouse moves to Idaho, okay? And the only reason that spouse is moving there, because his or her, you know, they get married, the new husband or new wife, has got a job out there. Beautiful home, as opposed to living in a tenement in Jamaica Plain. What's your feeling on that?
Tell me more about the children's relationship with the parent who's here in Massachusetts.
Pretty good, well, good relationship with both parents.
We have to look at, the impact upon the child as
Well,
well.
and always a bad impact.
Well, the law has evolved over the
Yeah,
period of my career. It was obvious advantage to the custodial parent. And in a sense shifted to looking at the relationship the child has with the parent that's staying behind and preserving that as well. I mean, removal cases are terrible because they don't settle. And I've tried a few over my career. And I've had it go both ways. I've had it where the child stayed in the Commonwealth or maybe moved to Arizona with an interstate parenting plan.
yeah. Yeah, what's your gut feel? You're not sitting here, you're not applying to be a judge. On removal, you think it's a good idea we have removal, or you against it? You know where I'm coming from, I hate it. I would, if I were a judge, there's no situation where I would allow the children to go to a parent in Idaho. And then I said to someone last week, guess what? You're not gonna be fired. And if they appeal it, you know how long that takes. So if I was a judge, don't even waste your time. We're trying to remove the kids out of the state.
Well, you make a really good point, which is I'm interested in preserving children's relationships with both parents. So that's gonna be my perspective.
Okay, what about visitation, whatever the term is? Like on Zoom. In other words, oh, Johnny can't make it this week, you're gonna have to talk to him on Zoom. And the next week, yeah, Michelle can't make it, she's going to ballet practice. And what do you think about Zoom for a relationship with a parent? Realizing that you have at least 3 kids at one.
That's not a parenting relationship.
Yeah, all right.
That's contact. That's not a parenting.
No, I agree. I like your answers, because to me, it's about children. I appreciate, your answers. Your Councilor DiPaolo is a big supporter of yours. And with the name coming before the council, I'll be more than happy to support you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ziegler.
Mark, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Of course, it's been said, but your counselor is a great supporter of yours. It's mentioned so to me. We had a lovely conversation prior to this hearing and talked about your desire to ensure that the court is running efficiently and that you're expediting cases when it is appropriate to do so. Holding counsel accountable as well. when it's necessary in the best interests of all parties involved. And just your overall dedication to the work of family and probate court over the years. So I really appreciated that conversation. What would you say is the most important function of the court?
The most important function of the court is to let as we discussed this morning, it's other than adoptions, there aren't a lot of joyful days coming before probate and family court judges, whether it's an estate where a loved one's been lost, a parent that needs guardianship or conservatorship, or it's a hotly contested custody issue. There aren't a lot of happy situations. So I think the most important work of the court, seeing as it's a heavily trafficked court, is that everyone's treated equally. Everyone feels like they were heard. They may not remember what I said, but they'll remember how I made them feel. And that's going to be my emphasis. That's what I'm going to be trying to work on every day.
During our conversation, we also talked about what improvements you would make to the court if allowed, emphasis on if allowed, right? And I appreciate your answer. Could you share that with us?
Just harking back to my earlier comments, thank you, Counselor, for the opportunity. I would really like to work closely with the probation department. My practice has been shared fairly equally between the housing court department and the probate and family court department. In housing court, a lot of cases settle in mediation. And we have wonderful probation officers in the probate and family court. It's a more disarming scenario for self-represented litigants to sit in an office with a probation officer and discuss their case. And if they're reaching agreements in probation, I want to empower the probation department to expedite that. I would like them to, the officer to be able to sign off on stipulation and for me to endorse it and get those folks out of the building. They don't need to come into the session and take time having their case called or waiting to have their case called. I really, I want to do this work and I really want to help this court move cases.
I know it's been touched upon, custody cases. How would you approach custody cases in which homelessness or housing insecurity is involved?
I don't think we're coming up on a period where that's going to get a whole lot better. So it's going to be an issue before the court. It's going to be between departments. As we discussed, juvenile, housing, probate. I'm from a baseline, I'm not going to look at a loss of housing as de facto parental unfitness. What I am going to look at is how fit parents deal with crisis and what assistance I can give in directing them towards getting the services they need, even if it's an interdepartmental referral to tenant preservation in another court, and looking at things like that.
For you, what would you see as the biggest challenge transitioning from law practice to the bench?
I'm going to the same place for work every day. Set hours. Those aren't the biggest challenges, but that's going to be a pretty big one. I've been a solo practitioner for a long time. I think my biggest challenge is going to be patience with the cases with parties that are court dating each other, where they just keep bringing their case back to court, and their case is that tall. I'm going to have to work on patience with those litigants that are equal players in the conflict.
I wanted to call out, and we talked about this as well, in your questionnaire, it highlights that you've received quite a few awards, some of them being from the Massachusetts Justice Project. We discussed it You said, I asked you about your work with that and what sort of, propelled that recognition and you harkened back to your program. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you? So, Judge, you'd have to close a shop, if you will, and assume a new role should you be appointed. But I wanted to talk a little bit about your pro bono work and how and what you would take from that experience to the bench.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. One of the greatest things about having a law degree is that sometimes you can just lift a finger for somebody else to make a huge difference. Helping them fill out a form, helping them to think about how the court looks at their situation. Everything is important to in anyone's life. Everything is important. And what I try to remind self-represented people are only so many things are relevant to the court, and let's focus on what the court looks at as relevant. Nicole and I have been talking about, I've got some public frequent flyer pro bono clients that I just periodically help, and we're trying to place them now, because it's not going to be easy for them to find somebody that always takes their calls. So that's one of the things I'm going to miss. Transitioning out of practice.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for you. Thank you for taking the time to answer.
Thank you so much, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy.
I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions for a couple of reasons, but I just want to bring one thing up because just by coincidence, I happened to be talking to a lawyer the other day who does a lot of probate. And he was complaining to me about the overuse of GALs and how much it costs the litigants. And how it's just imposed on the litigants by judges, those costs. And you'd agree with me, they can be pretty significant, right?
Yes.
I don't do any probate, so I don't know what it costs. But what kind of numbers are you talking about when you start appointing GALs in these situations?
Oh, I think the initial asking cost of a guardian ad litem investigation could start at $5,000.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
You know, and if it goes beyond just an initial thing, it can add up to a small fortune. For some people don't have that kind of money. You'd agree with me, right?
I do.
So you're appointing lawyers for kids, you're appointing GALs, people are paying attorney's fees. It's starting to add up to a lot of money. Do you think the judges should just be willy-nilly imposing those kinds of costs on people?
No, I do not.
Do you agree that they do that?
No, I don't agree that they do that because they have the parties' financial statements before them in court. And they're looking at what's on the financial statement as far as resources to afford that kind of investigation. Otherwise, the judge is looking at estate pay.
You're getting people that are like, they're going through a divorce, there's a couple of kids. Probably somebody's paying child support, they may be paying temporary alimony, they may be paying other expenses with it. People that, are doing okay, but not necessarily wealthy, and then you're throwing that on top of it. It adds up to a lot of money. It can really be an imposition on people. Would you agree with that?
I do.
So why are we doing that? I mean, I thought your job as a judge was to try to figure that stuff out. In an adversarial system where lawyers are presenting it to you.
So I can certainly hold an evidentiary hearing, but in a child custody situation, and there are alternatives to what the problem you're discussing, which is a state pay appointment to a GAL. But there's also a probation investigation, which doesn't cost the parties anything.
Okay, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay, and
But that's not what we're talking about. Wait a minute, I'm talking about GALs that cost money, a lot of money. That starts at $5,000, you told me. I assume it can go up to 10 and 15 in some cases, right?
Right.
It's a lot of money.
Yes.
I just don't think, I think they should be looking at the alternatives instead of pushing that on people. It's further straining finances when people are going through a divorce. You agree, when people go through a divorce, it certainly strains, it's a strain on the family finances.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. In the average case, I'm not talking about the super wealthy people, but the average person going through that.
But the investigations that you're referring to, Counselor, are usually brought by a motion of one of the parties.
Okay, so what?
I don't foresee myself as.
It's usually the party without the money that's bringing the motion, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna play, governor's gonna come out in a minute for our assembly. I had a chance to talk to you on the phone. We had a long conversation. I think you're gonna be terrific. You do have a big supporter in your counselor. Absolutely, he is a huge supporter. He's a big Worcester supporter guy anyway, but the Worcester County and does a great job representing them. So I'll be voting for you next week. I hope I never see you again, because if I do, it's only because my wife's smartened up. Because I don't do probate work. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I want to thank the council. This was a good hearing, and everyone brings a unique and valuable perspective, and we always have substantive conversations. So, Attorney Lee, you know I'm a big supporter of yours. I think for the public's context, the probate court has added several judges in the last several years. Legislatively, there were new seats created to address the important work that you do. We've seen outstanding nominees coming through, especially in the Central Mass area, and folks not from Central Mass, but who are seated in Central Mass now. I know practitioners and the courthouse are excited to continue adding to that and to move towards stability there. And I know the Chief Justice is doing an outstanding job making everything work somehow. I want to thank you for your service in municipal government as well. That's thankless work, and it shows a commitment to community in several roles, including you're currently chair, correct, of the select board?
Chair.
And that level of community service combined with the conversations we have had about various courts convinced me that you're really interested in the best interest of the courts, having the best courts for the Commonwealth and the people of the Commonwealth. I think your heart's in the right place. Your experience is outstanding. This is an outstanding moment in your career to be taking the bench. I know you've applied before. I'm very happy to see you before us. I look forward to supporting you when we meet for assembly to vote on your nomination. So with that, I close this hearing.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Counselor. I'd like to recognize Counselor Ziegler for prayer, words of reflection, and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
We find ourselves in an unprecedented time of fear and uncertainty. May we, in the work that we do, provide a sense of hope. May we serve our Commonwealth to the best of our ability and remain focused on what is most important. May our efforts be fruitful. May they be discerning. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you guys have had a busy morning. Sounds like. I'd like to recognize Counselor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So move, Governor.
Motion's made. Is there a second? It's seconded by Counselor Ianella. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to recognize Counselor Dolan for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Civil. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to recognize Counselor Dolan for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Jillian Finer to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
Quite enthusiastically, she's going to be a wonderful judge.
Wonderful. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Counselor Ferreira seconds the motion. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd ask Sonia to help us by calling the roll.
Counselor Dolan,
Yes.
Counselor Ianella,
Yes.
Counselor Ziegler,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor DePaulo,
Yes.
Counselor Jacobs,
Yes.
Counselor Ferrera,
Yes.
Counselor Civil. Yes.
8 members voting, 8 in the affirmative, the matter carries. I'd like to recognize Counselor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Alessandra Petroselli to the position of Associate Justice in Probate and Family Court.
It is with great pleasure I make that motion. She is a fantastic nominee. I was thrilled with the nomination and I'm thrilled to make the motion.
Excellent. Motion's been made by Counselor Kennedy and seconded by Counselor Ziegler. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Sonia to please call the roll.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor DePaulo,
Yes.
Counselor Jacobs,
Yes.
Counselor Ferrera, Counselor Civil,
Yes.
Counselor Dolan,
Yes.
Counselor Ianella,
Yes.
Counselor Ziegler.
Yes.
8 members voting, 8 in the affirmative, the matter carries. Next up, I'd like to recognize Counselor Civil for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Elena Sizer to the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court.
I make that motion, and also Elena is a prime example of what we look forward to represent as a judge in family and probate court. She's an excellent nominee, and I look forward to what she's going to do in the near future. Compelling story, compelling example of what the American dream is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Dolan. Any other comments or questions on this nominee? Seeing none, Sonia, if you would please call the roll.
Counselor Civil? Yes. Counselor Dolan?
Yes.
Counselor Ianella?
Yes.
Counselor Ziegler?
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor DePaulo?
Yes.
Counselor Jacobs?
Yes.
Counselor Ferrera?
Yes.
8 members voting, 8 in the affirmative, the matter carries. I know we also have 4 new nominations. Ann Dolly for the position of Clerk Magistrate in Peabody District Court. Counselor Ziegler, I don't know if you have a date and a time for hearing yet.
Yes, so I'd like to schedule that for next Wednesday, the 12th at 10 a.m.
12th at 10 a.m. Okay. And then we have in Counselor Ferreira's district, Kimberly Carras to the position of Clerk Magistrate in the Nantucket District Court.
I have not talked to her yet, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, great. So TB to be determined on that one. And then Patrick Rafferty, Counselor DePaulo, that is the position of Clerk Magistrate in Uxbridge District Court. I don't know if you have a date or time yet.
We do an 11 o'clock next Wednesday, the 12th.
Okay, 12th at 11. And last but not least is Lori Levitt Wheeler to the position of Clerk Magistrate in Hampton County. Counselor Jacobs?
Yeah, so November 19th at 11.
19th at 11 a.m. I think that concludes our business. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Counselor Kennedy, seconded by Counselor Ziegler. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thanks, everyone.